Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me today is Rebecca Colaway. She is the Executive Director of Western Fairfax Christian Ministries. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So if people have heard WFCM, it actually means Western Fairfax Christian Ministries, although we get so used to using initials that we often forget what they actually stand for.
The alphabet soup, yes.
Right.
I had somebody ask me recently, is that a radio station? I was like, no.
No, we're a nonprofit. And your nonprofit has been around a long time, since 1987.
That's
so
correct.
Tell us a little bit about the genesis, the founding story of WFCM.
Sure. Our founding story is actually very similar to a lot of the nonprofits in the area. We were started by 12 area churches in 1987. Our founding churches basically were finding that people were making the rounds and asking for money at every congregation, and they really started to feel like they could make a bigger impact coming together and doing that work collaboratively than they could separately.
And it makes sense. And you're right. You've hit the 30-year mark. I sit on the board of Bright Paths. We've hit our 34-year mark. And there's a lot of other nonprofits in the area who seem to be about 30 years old. And I think that has to do probably with the explosion in growth of the county. You know, we now have 1.2 million people. There is growing income inequality, which has created greater needs across the county, including in the western part, which is where you guys are located.
Well, and when we were started, I mean, we were really the frontier. I mean, people were just starting to move out into that part of the county, and there wasn't any opportunity to really help people before we existed. So, yeah.
And so you do a lot of different kinds of things. So so give us some idea of some of the programs.
Sure.
That are your everyday operations.
Sure. So we are the largest client choice food pantry in Fairfax County. Basically what that means is that people get to come in and they get to shop. So instead of us packing a bag and passing it out the back door, people actually get to come in and take a grocery cart and choose what they want from the shelf. That's really great because a lot of people have dietary restrictions, whether it's for religious reasons or because they're allergic to something. That way we're not giving them something that they don't need, and that item then gets left for somebody else who does want it and who does need it. So that is probably the biggest kind of visible piece of what we do. But we also provide emergency financial assistance for people who are at risk of losing their homes or having their utilities shut off. So if someone comes into us with a utility bill with a shut-off notice or an eviction notice, we will try to help them. They have to meet certain income requirements, of course, and we will only help up to a certain amount, and then we'll partner with other agencies in the area to make sure that their need is met. And then the other thing that we do is we have a program Pathways to Self-Sustainability. We call it our Pathways to Success program. And we work with 12 to 15 families a year to basically help them work their way out of needing us.
Right.
So we provide them with monthly budget counseling. They do check in with a financial counselor every single month. They commit to coming to class and to meeting with the counselor, and then in return, in partnership with Fairfax County, we provide them with a $5,000 scholarship. The money doesn't actually go to them. It goes to help start a savings account, help pay off past due bills, help pay whatever it is that they need as they're kind of readjusting their lifestyle so that they can live within their means.
Yeah, so it sounds a lot like the gig that Bright Paths does, because there is such a need to help do skill building so that people are self-sufficient.
And we actually partner with Bright Paths. We do, and in fact, we've got one coming up. Every month we do a financial counseling clinic in partnership with Bright Paths where people can come in, it's free. We actually provide childcare and snacks, and they can come in after work and meet with a counselor, have their credit report pulled, talk about their budget, do whatever it is that they need financially, and we do that in partnership with Bright Paths. We love partnering with Bright Paths, you know.
Yeah, because that's what we do. Financial literacy and financial classes and financial mentoring is what we do. And working in collaboration with other nonprofits, that is a skill set people have to have. But not every nonprofit needs to develop that as one of their core missions.
Yeah, and you know, our foundation is Christian, and so, you know, I always say, you know, God put all the gifts that you need to serve the people who need to be served in your community. He didn't just give them all to you.
Right.
Right? Like, you do not have to be all things to all people, because there's someone else who has this gift and is doing this. And so that's why partnership is so important.
So let's talk about where things like your donated food items come from, because you came and spoke at our Rotary Club.
Yes.
Our Rotary Club has actually been affiliated with you since we started 11 years ago, because Charles Keener is one of our charter members, and his father. Yeah, so that's...
So we actually honored the Keener family at our 30th anniversary dinner last year. Dale Keener provided WFCM with our first permanent location right after we started. We were in the basement of his insurance company.
Right.
So yeah, the Keener family has been, we kind of consider them founding partners. They've been an important part of our history for a long time.
And so our club remains committed to that too. And so, you know, and this is true in the summertime, and holiday dinners are one thing, and we certainly have partnered with you.
Everybody thinks about us at Christmas because everybody's thinking about that.
Right, but in the summertime when the kids are out of school, really is a very, very hard time, and donations of every kind tend to dip.
They do.
At that. So I know our Rotary Club does food drives, Marshall brings it over. You know, how can people engage in that way? Are there specific items that you need? I mean, I know at Bright Paths we get a lot of odd things.
Yes.
And so we really need to give people the things they need. So how would people know what that is?
So we actually publish, every month we publish a most needed foods list on our website, www.wfcmva.org.
Okay.
You can go there and check our most needed foods list. We also have a do-it-yourself food drive kit. So you could print off flyers. Like if you wanted to do this at your church or with your swim club or whatever, you could go online and print off the kit. There's instructions on how to do it and what items you should collect.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we found that we were fielding all kinds of phone calls all the time about how do I do a food drive, and so Jenny, who's on our staff, put the kit together, and it's actually been really great because now we can direct people there and they can do it themselves.
And what are some of the non-obvious things? And I, you know, because WIC and SNAP don't cover essential items, so people are thinking I need to give food, but there's lots of items that people need.
There's a lot of items that people need, you know, things like feminine hygiene products, diapers, sanitary, like Depends, those kinds of items. None of those things are covered by food stamps, and they actually, to be quite honest, are some of the more expensive items.
I know.
In terms of hygiene that people often need. So toilet paper, bars of soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, all of those things. Are things that we try to keep on hand and usually have enough of that we can let clients have a choice of those items. If people come in with kids under a certain age and they need diapers, we will always send them away with a pack of diapers.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, those are just must-have items.
Absolutely.
And the fact that people don't realize that they're just not covered, that you can't go to the grocery store and get laundry detergent, right? Because there's no money and it's just not a covered item. Yeah. And they are also shelf stable, which I like too, because a lot of the things that end up getting donated, we have to check very carefully to make sure they're not expired.
Correct.
Right? And so that's one of the challenges too when you're doing food drives and people are giving you things. It's like, oh, is it expired? And
did it come out of the back of my grandmother's pantry and it's from 1985? Right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
We do get those things.
I know. Bright Paths gets them too. And so in helping people to understand the things that they could provide that are always needed, cooking oil, things like that are always needed.
People don't think about things like, I'm glad you mentioned cooking oil actually. People don't think about things like cooking oil, flour, and sugar. You know, just because you maybe can't buy groceries doesn't mean you don't want to bake a birthday cake for your son, for example. And those aren't necessarily things that people think of when they're giving to the food pantry. So those are actually awesome items that we do try to keep on hand.
Yeah, and so we started moving to grocery gift cards where we were for the reason that you mentioned too, which is sometimes people have food allergies or culturally they'd rather have beans and rice. That's their choice. Sure. So, you know, they're not often given in these lovely baskets that are genuinely, heartfeltly delivered, given those things that they want. So what else are you kind of doing to help move people forward from their crisis state to being self-sufficient?
A couple of years ago, the board of directors actually voted on a 5-year strategic plan, and that was probably the biggest piece of it was, you know, it would be great if we could work ourselves out of a job.
Oh, yeah.
Like if we could work ourselves out of business and people didn't need us anymore, we would consider ourselves a success.
I agree with you.
Part of the challenge is, you know, a lot of times we see the same families month after month, year after year, and at some point you have to start wondering, you know, what are the positive changes that we could be helping these folks make so that they they don't have to keep coming here. We do serve some people who, you know, are older and are retired and are living on a fixed Social Security income or something like that, who we recognize are probably just always going to be with us because we're part of their monthly budget. But there were a lot of people who, you know, better education, better employment, maybe a different living situation could make all the difference. And so we've started, actually, if people come in for emergency financial assistance, we will help them once, but then we are actually asking people to participate in a budgeting class before we will help them again. It's been definitely a learning experience for us because folks who live from crisis to crisis aren't thinking about, oh, I better go to this budget class.
They're not planning ahead.
They're not planning ahead. And then when the next crisis hits and they come to us and then we say, you know, we needed you to attend this budget class, we can't help you until you do that. That's hard.
It is hard.
But we're really trying to think creatively about how we can help people move out of their situations and into better ones.
And there's some kind of more unique things in Western Fairfax than maybe in Eastern Fairfax, simply because of transportation.
Yeah.
You know, you were talking about the bus route.
I was just talking about the bus route. There, so we're located in Chantilly. If you live, you know, the 3 or 5 miles away in Centerville, and you don't have transportation, there's no direct way to get to us. You have to actually take the connector into Vienna and then change buses and come back out. Even though it's, you know, a 5-minute car ride, it's an hour-and-a-half bus ride.
See, and those are the things I think people do not understand.
Yeah, it takes a whole day to get to us if you don't have transportation and you can't pay for an Uber and you live in Centerville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very expensive to be poor.
It's very expensive to be poor. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think in looking at how all nonprofits can help to identify how ways in which to help people, you know, we need to be the voice in the county too. I mean, everybody goes to the budget hearings to ask for.
Well, the county has studied the route. The route is actually in the plan. The county has put together the transportation priorities, and it is in the plan. The problem is they can only fund a certain number of projects every year. And so one of the things that I've learned as executive director is you really have to advocate for the things that you need, because the louder ones are the ones that often get the funding, and rightfully so. They've got people who are expressing why it's so important that those things get taken care of. So that's, you know, I didn't even know the county had studied it until I went to one of those meetings and found out. So
yeah, and so you bring up something really important about advocacy too.
Absolutely.
People who are affected by these things are the people who need to show up and tell their story, because it's the stories and the human connection that makes all the difference. And when we come back from this break, we are going to continue to talk with Rebecca about the many ways in which they're trying to help people out in the western part of Fairfax County learn the skills to be self-sufficient and to thrive here in Fairfax.
Maria, so how's work?
It was 4th period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bell and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year, I might get to go.
Cool.
I'll never forget the day our landlord called and said, read your lease. No pets allowed. My owner tells him my dog ate the lease, but that didn't work. And now I'm stuck in a shelter. But this pit bull is ready for a new crib. I'm loving, loyal, and play well with others. So don't be intimidated by all my muscles, because the biggest one I have is my heart. That's right, I said it.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. We are talking with Rebecca Colaway. She is the Executive Director at Western Fairfax Christian Ministries. You've had that job for 2 years now?
I have, almost exactly.
Almost exactly 2 years now. So tell us a little bit about, maybe not everybody when we say Western Fairfax understands what is in Western Fairfax.
Sure. Yeah, we serve about 5 different zip codes, but basically what it comes down to is it's Chantilly and Centerville, parts of Fairfax, Fairfax Station, and the town of Clifton.
Okay, town of Clifton. And so what are some of the primary hurdles that you're finding? Well, you know, people get into this situation, but there has to be some patterns.
Sure. You know, a lot of people think, when they think poor people, that they think about ghettos or they think about like housing projects. You're not going to find those in western Fairfax County.
You're so right.
You're going to find wealthy neighborhoods where everybody's house kind of looks like they can afford to live there. What we're finding in our part of the county is that poverty is really hidden. You may have a neighbor who lives next door to you who can't pay their mortgage, and you would never know,
right? Because
their house is the same market as yours. It looks like yours, right? And so that is actually a big piece of it. Is I think that people in our part of the county don't even recognize that poverty exists out there. So
yeah, I mean, it makes it hard for people to understand the challenges. But you know, sometimes out in Western Fairfax, Centerville's a great example of where the housing is more affordable because there's no transportation anywhere. If you don't have a car.
It's actually one of the last remaining outposts of affordable housing in the county. And I actually don't even think Centerville is that inexpensive.
Right.
But it's more affordable than a lot of the other areas in Fairfax County. And what we're finding in Centerville, quite honestly, is houses that have been subdivided that have, 3 families maybe living in them. Where we're hearing about that really is in the elementary schools.
Right.
Families that are all living together. Maybe they can't speak English, maybe they're immigrants, maybe they're undocumented, and they're living together to support one another because they can't afford it any other way.
Right. And you're right. You do see a lot when you talk about how poverty is hidden. Mm-hmm. Even where I am in Fairfax City, the people you see on the street or at events or wherever are not the children you see in the elementary school.
Right.
Where you know the diversity of your city is when you look in the elementary schools and you realize who's living there.
Yeah, and at London Town Elementary in Centerville, they speak Spanish. The teacher, it's a Spanish language school. And so there's so many Latino families living in that area, and that's really where you see it. The other thing is, too, I don't think that we as adults necessarily recognize how much hunger affects children.
Right. And
their ability to learn, their ability to socialize and do well in school. I think a lot of adults often assume that the kids don't know. The kids don't really understand. It's interesting, I posted an article recently that it may have come out of the Post actually, that I posted on our Facebook page where they were talking about what children really do understand about hunger. If mom is not eating on purpose so that kids can eat, children notice that.
Yes, they do.
And children are actually taking on a lot of the household burden and worry about the poverty and the hunger without the parents ever really knowing.
Right.
So.
And one of the things that adds to that, there was in our legislature this year a lunch shaming bill, because there are schools that basically if you don't have lunch money and you don't have lunch, they'll give you cereal or they'll give you. But it's so obvious.
Right.
And the stigma around how we treat children who don't have lunch or lunch money. Surely the adults in this world should be able to solve that problem.
Well, and honestly, if you want those children to ever get out of their situation, they need to have healthy foods to eat so that they can learn and grow and be who they need to be in the world.
Right.
And they're not going to do that if they're eating cereal for lunch.
I know, and just the stigma that all your classmates know, and it's not the child's fault.
No.
They're not responsible for earning their lunch money and bringing it to school, and so it sometimes perplexes me how adults can not see that that's a problem. And there are, whether it's nonprofits, Bright Paths does a Food for Thought program where we send food home on the weekends with some of these kids. But you try to give some dignity. You try to have some empathy for the fact that we don't want children to feel the shame and indignity of not having enough to eat.
Absolutely.
And so this has perplexed me for a long time. But so what are some of the other things that you find? Housing costs, I know, transportation, English skills, but just skills.
So there's actually 2 things that we're doing right now that I'm really excited about. We've had an intern volunteering her time with us this spring. She's fantastic. I'd love to put in a job plug for her because she's so great. But she has been working with our families developing 2 programs that are kind of right along those lines. So one of them is a resume writing class. We're actually partnering. You mentioned partnering earlier. We're partnering with Computer Corps.
I would love to. We've had them on the show before.
Absolutely. So one of their volunteers is coming in and helping people write resumes. We're piloting it this spring. We've just started, but we've had a really good turnout so far. So we're offering that. And then the other thing that she has done, which is just amazing, is we're working with Centerville Presbyterian Church. They have a community garden project that they call God's Garden.
Oh, wow.
And they are letting us use a couple of their plots to start our Seeds of Hope garden program, which is an opportunity for clients to get out and actually grow some of their own food. So kids can learn where their food comes from. They can learn about healthy options. They can help participate in planting and growing, and then they can take it home with them and eat it. Yeah.
I love school gardens for that same reason too. Kids are fascinated when it's their carrot. Yeah. Like, look, it's my carrot.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise they probably wouldn't eat a
Absolutely.
carrot, but if it's my carrot, I can eat my carrot.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of ways in which we can teach people, you know, the other thing is food really is wellness, and that's something all the food pantries in the world, and it's just not a problem that we can solve, is that a lot of these shelf-stable foods aren't the most nutritious. But what else can we do?
Right.
And but people need to understand that to be healthy themselves and to help make sure their kids stay healthy, they have to have fruits and vegetables and fresh food.
And we try to provide those for folks. I mean, in the summer it's easier because people are giving us from the gardens and those kinds of things. But we do partner with the local grocery stores. We get fresh produce from Giant and Harris Teeter and some of the local stores. So that's really great. It kind of depends what we get. It kind of depends on what they have.
Right.
So sometimes the selections are better than others. Sometimes we have vegetables that people don't know what to do with. Like we get a whole case full of, I don't know, radishes or bok choy. And then, you know, one of our dreams is maybe to be able to teach people to cook with those things. Like you got it at the food pantry. What can you really make with it that would be nutritious and healthy? And so
See, I would sign up for that. I go to Super H and I'm like, that looks so fascinating, but I wouldn't know what to do with it, whatever it is.
And we've done that on occasion. We've had some opportunity to do it. We've got a senior luncheon that we host, and we've done it a couple of times with them. But really, to be able to offer it to the wider client base is kind of one of our long-term strategic goals.
That's very cool. So in the summertime, and I never considered this, but if people have like an overabundance, let's say of zucchini.
Imagine. That never happens.
I know a lot of people with an overabundance of zucchini, right? It's kind of like, but they don't have to just like drop it and run on their neighbor's doorsteps, right? Like they could bring
that sounds like my mother. I think my mother did that when I was a kid.
I think that my cousin was talking about it. She's like, my neighbor had it, and you know, they just run around. So, but people could actually bring their excess vegetables instead of trying to palm it off on people. They could bring it to you.
Yeah, they absolutely could. We are also encouraging people, if they have room in their garden, to add a row.
Oh, right. Specifically for donation.
Absolutely. They could add a row, add a plant, add a row specifically to donate to WFCM. We actually have one family, they have a lot of land, and they plant an entire garden and donate all of everything that comes out of it to us.
Wow.
So there's lots of ways to do that, but if you're already gardening for yourself, add a tomato plant for us, you know, add a row of whatever it is you're growing and then bring it to the pantry.
That is fantastic. Yeah. So long term, what do you see? You're in your 31st year. You're doing a lot of things with computer core and financial literacy and all kinds of things.
So I think the thing, you know, we could not do what we do without the help of Fairfax County. They give us a lot of financial resources, especially to be able to distribute in the community to people who are in need. Part of what Fairfax County is doing right now out in our area is a place-based initiative conversation. They're kind of looking at where kind of the biggest needs are in the community and starting to strategize about ways we could be most helpful, kind of even on a bigger scale, through some grassroots organizing and those kinds of things. So they've been meeting in the schools, and they've been talking with we've been a part of the conversation. Some of the other agencies in the area have been part of the conversation, and really identifying what's next. How are we going to help the people who are kind of the most vulnerable and the most in need? So that's actually what I'm excited about right now is what's next. I'm not sure that we even really know what's next. You know, we've identified some of the biggest needs: transportation,
that's huge.
English language, you know, getting people to work, but and also being in the schools and making sure that students have an opportunity to really develop in their potential.
Yeah. See, so I'm an advocate for community schools. Too short of a time for me to say why. But everybody who watches this show know it's about community schools, and we don't have any in Virginia. But so many community schools in other parts of the country, faith communities and nonprofits, are their deepest partnerships, right? Because and some of those exist without any infrastructure around it. There's a lot of those partnerships already. Bright Paths has them with schools, but the fact of the matter is that we really need to solve sort of the Maslow's hierarchy of need issues for children.
Absolutely. Well, and a lot of times we find our clients through the schools because the guidance counselors and the teachers have day-to-day contact with those kids, and they know.
Right.
And so it's a matter of getting the parents to connect in some way.
And that's probably true of your holiday program.
It
Or,
is.
the guidance counselors, I think, are kind of the conduit. And again,
They are.
my Rotary Club participates. I'm sure you have a lot of other service organizations who work with you over the holidays.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that beyond the holidays, these people need support every day of the year, especially in the summertime when kids are out of school.
That's exactly what I was going to say. People don't realize that summer is actually kind of a crisis time for families that are in need, because during the school year they rely on maybe the free or reduced lunch program. They rely on those backpacks coming home after school filled with food on the weekends, and they don't have that during the summer.
Yeah. So if there's one thing that we really want people to understand about how to engage with WFCM, online, they can find lists, they can hit the donate button, they can volunteer.
Absolutely. In fact, we're a small staff, and most of us are some variety of part-time, so we are really volunteer driven. I mean, we it's Volunteer Appreciation Week. We couldn't do what we do without the volunteers. I mean, we've got well over 10,000 volunteer hours every year.
Wow.
With all of the things that people do for us. So,
well, I appreciate you being here, Rebecca. I really do. And for you at home, if you're going to plant a garden, or maybe you weren't thinking about it, plant an extra row, because they want your fruits and vegetables. And remember them in the summertime too. As school winds up this year, remember that their pantry is serving families and families with children who don't have school lunches and don't have the take-home food on the weekends. There's lots of ways that you can engage with WFCM, and I hope that you will appreciate the fact that this is what you need to know about how we live here in Fairfax County.